Let's talk about Rutgers and Purdue, because nobody other than Greg Waddell, our producer for tonight, saw this one coming, right, guys?
No, I certainly didn't see it coming. I thought Purdue just had so many weapons, but you got to give Peichel and his guys credit, Jeff. Like, those dudes guard, especially on the perimeter. They've got a lot of big bodies around the perimeter. They are small inside. That's what kind of made me worry about Rutgers coming in. But, man, when you got a guy like Ron Harper Jr., and he's locked in and focused and engaged not only on scoring but on rebounding, doing some of the other things as well, he's the kind of player that can carry you on a given night, and he showed that tonight. Ended up with 30, and man, that shot! I think I woke up both dogs, my kids, and my wife had to call down to check on me. I'm down in my office right now. So I mean, what a game! Terrific game. I called it a little too soon. I was like, well, Purdue just has all the answers, but they just didn't have enough time to give a final answer.
Yeah, and I also listen, this is a Purdue team that. Again, had been pretty dominant all year, just took the number one spot days ago. And I don't know if it was a little bit of a letdown game. You know, Geo Baker didn't play Kevin. Everything was lined up. I know it's the rack. I get it. But I don't think anybody thought this was going to happen.
No, I mean, look, it's really hard to win on the road in college basketball tonight. Yet another reminder of that. But, you know, I think at the end of the day, there was nothing on paper that made you think, you know, there wasn't even an indication that Rutgers was starting to turn a corner from this slow start, right? They lost by 35 points to Illinois 6 days ago. You know, they were coming off a UMass loss a week before that, and the week before that, Lafayette, right? Like there wasn't this turning tide for Rutgers where you said, okay, maybe there's an upset here. This was completely out of the blue, and I think it's kind of what makes this sport so great. But it was, I mean, just a special game. When you let a team like Rutgers hang around in their home gym, I think we saw this with Duke and Ohio State. You know, obviously Rutgers isn't quite as talented as Ohio State, but Duke was the better team. Ohio State just hung in, and then let the crowd carry them across the finish line in the final 10 minutes. I think it was a very similar kind of game script today, where Purdue made that little push, got it to, I think, 8 or 9, but they couldn't put Rutgers away. And once that didn't happen, you started to wonder when Rutgers could make that push and really make things interesting.
So Gonzaga started the year preseason number 1. They looked every bit the part of it early. I mean, smashing Texas and UCLA. There was no doubt. And then they've kind of faltered a little bit lately. Duke gets the number 1 spot. They lose at Ohio State, you know, a few days after playing in Vegas and beating Gonzaga. I'm not sure. I think Ohio State caught them at the right time. And then Purdue gets it, and they lose to a Rutgers team. So I've kind of said this from the get-go. I don't think there was a dominant team, even in the preseason. I didn't look at Gonzaga and say they're so dominant like Baylor was, or even the Zags were a year ago. But does this further illustrate, Terrence, the fact that, listen, maybe there's more than 8 teams or 10 teams that have a chance to win this whole thing?
But it's all matchups and who can win 6 games and who's playing well right then. I think the number one concern with Gonzaga, and we all tend to bring them up, is they have trouble with big athletes. I think Drew Timme has showed that whenever they played Duke, and then they struggled again against Alabama. Those guys have really high-level athletic guys, and that worries me when it comes to Gonzaga. Now, are they going to be able to figure it out at the end of the year? Absolutely. What have they made? 6 straight Sweet 16, Sweeney? That's a stat for you to know. I don't know for sure. But I think, like, they're going to end up figuring it out, but there's not a dominant team per se. But there is one kind of laying in the weeds that not a lot of people are talking about. Baylor is really, really good.
All right. I'm not sure I'm ready to go there yet. Okay. They're like, really I good. Like Baylor, but I think they're another one of these teams. I'm putting them in the same realm as, and I'm not even sure if I'm putting them there yet. I want to see them against Villanova. By the way, that was still like my favorite matchup from a couple of years ago. That's when I fell in love with Baylor, was Myrtle Beach, where they beat Villanova in the best game I saw all year in terms of how it was played. The execution, both teams were making shots, but they were guarding. And I remember talking to Scott Drew after that and saying, like, I love this friggin' team. So I like Baylor, but I still need to see them beat a really good team and a really good program, and they get Villanova coming to Waco this weekend.
Yeah, and I'm fully on board with that. But there's a couple of things that make me think like they could be that team. One, they get Sochan, they get Kendall Brown. That's the only team I've ever seen that wins a national championship and gets more athletic.
Yeah.
Like it's unbelievable what they did. And then last year too, I had some concerns, and I voiced this to you guys on the opening show that we did with all the All-Americans. We put James Akinjo. Who's going to replicate all those assists by Mitchell and Jared Butler? Last year's team averaged 16.9 assists a game. This year's, Jeff, 18.9 assists a game. 2 more full assists per game. That ball's still popping. There's still weapons everywhere. And now they have more than 2 or 3 rim threats. I mean, they're throwing oops to a lot of people, and they just guard at such a high level. And I'm not even mentioning LJ Cryer, who's been really good as well.
Yeah. And again, Scott Drew's just, listen, he's made a believer out of everybody. I mean, if you're not a Scott Drew believer by now, you know what? I don't like you. I'll say it. I don't like you if you don't buy into what Scott Drew is selling right now.
Culture of joy. Culture of joy.
It is the culture of joy. That's what it is. You're right. Like Jay Wright has the culture, but Scott Drew has the culture of joy, and he's always happy. Sweeney, what is there somebody right now that you think is the best team in America, or do we just not have one right now?
I don't think we have one. I think there's this kind of top grouping where, Purdue is, I think, the hardest team to guard in the country because they're so multiple with the ways they can hurt you. I think Gonzaga is probably the most complete team. But like you said, Terrence, obviously they struggle with the big athletes. They've had that issue against Bama, Duke, going back to last season. I think Duke is probably the most talented team in the country, but they're going to be up and down, I think, just because they're playing so many younger guys. And obviously Paolo has been working through the second half struggles and things of that nature. I think Baylor belongs in that category at this point. I think Arizona has a chance to prove that they belong in that category this weekend against Illinois. I think they've looked the part so far, but kind of similar. They haven't really played anyone other than Michigan, who was not in a good place at that point to really judge off them. I think there's 5, 6, 7 teams in that top elite tier that can go, that we can kind of say is a slight cut above the rest, but it feels wide open. I don't think there's one team right now that stands out. I don't necessarily think that Purdue, even before today, was fully there for me. I thought they had earned that number 1 spot. They had earned that AP poll ranking, but I don't think I woke up this morning saying, yeah, Purdue is the clear favorite to win the national title. I don't think we had one before, and I think today illustrated why we don't.
Yeah, you know what? The only thing that worries me about Purdue, like they've got obviously an electric scorer in Jaden Ivey. They've got 2 really good bigs that are unstoppable but can't play together, right? And that does hurt them a little bit, Zach Edey and Trevion Williams. Trevion was, again, very few guys can stop him in the post, but he did have, again, at the end of the game there, a charge that was certainly ill-advised that kind of cost them. What I still worry about is their point guard play. It's solid. It is very solid. And I'm not sure solid is necessarily good enough to win 6 straight games. I like Hunter, and Iowa State ends up winning by 20 in Ames. They are now 9-0. TJ Otzelberger, you're not going to find a better start to your head coaching career at a spot than TJ has had. But to get back to Purdue, am I crazy to worry about their point guard play or no?
What's your concern? Are you wanting more?
Okay. I don't know if they give you enough. And if Jaden Ivey's not having a game, and again, he's still erratic in his decision-making. He's been very good in transition this year, but even the play he made tonight, game on the line, he tried to split those, the trap. And what did he do? It was kind of a bonehead play. He's super athletic. All he's got to do is jump up and be able to throw a pass to a teammate there. Instead, he gets hit with a walk, or and he and Trevion both made mistakes at the end of the game, and they could have iced it.
The numbers say that they're going to be fine. They're averaging 18 assists and 12 turnovers. The numbers say they're going to be fine, but it comes down to end of game situations, and obviously they're going to learn from this one. Be honest with you, Jeff and Kev, like I have so much faith in Paint that he's going to find ways to kind of overcome some decision-making things, because he's going to put it on himself. And, another thing too is Ivy got that ball in dead man's corner.
He did.
I mean, you just get, like, if you're going to get that ball anywhere on the floor when you're going up against pressure, especially a 1-2, 1-1 or whatever it was, where they're trapping first pass as soon as it gets in, don't get that ball in the dead man's corner, because everybody can converge and it limits your options. So I would imagine that doesn't happen again. I think they have an elite playmaker. I think they have enough shooting around them. I think that was one of the biggest concerns coming in. Brandon Newman and Stefanovic have been really, really good. The team shooting 41% from three. Like, this Purdue team, if you take away, an end of the game decision against a Rutgers team playing at one of the craziest environments in college basketball, and I'm calling it that because they're crazy when Rutgers is 5-4 too. Like, that's a special place. I mean, I was up there calling a radio game when they played Clemson, a Big Ten ACC Challenge. And even so, I mean, the place was electric. But I mean, I like this Purdue team. I just feel like there's too many weapons at too many of the most important places on the floor.